this is a weird question, but I've seen Bill Clinton talk, and there's a definite feminine shine to that man. He is radiant. Less so now, he's getting older and doesn't have quite the same shine, but he's one of the shiniest, radiant men I've ever seen in public office. I would say he has a stronger feminine shine than his wife does. Do you want to comment on that? And I'm not criticizing either way. He definitely has a masculine core, but he's not being criticized for being having the feminine shine. She's got a real masculine core. She's being criticized for it.
I think there is an important distinction between gender and energy. So you could be either a male or female gender, but you may embody a different energy, right? So in a female body, I could very much embody a masculine energy, or I could embody a very feminine energy, and vice versa. And so I agree with you, and I do think it's interesting because I can only imagine as a president, of course you're going to run a ton of masculine energy through your body because you have to. You know, you become this container, you become this direction for an entire country. So you do have to step into this very masculine role. I do find it interesting that she's criticized for that because I can't imagine what else she would do. And she has to step into this role in a way that previous presidents, well, they've all been men. They animate more of a masculine energy probably, and so she has to be able to step into this world, as do all women when we go out into the world and we have to, kick ass at our jobs and things like that. So Bill is more radiant. His public persona is more relaxed in a feminine type of way. And it is interesting to see. It's interesting to see that, she's criticized on one hand for not having something that her husband is able to do, and he did it while he was in office too. So, the scrutiny is interesting, but it's also, I can't imagine what else she would do in this particular role. Could she relax a little bit into her feminine? Probably, but what kind of effect then would that have?
Well, I think with her also, I think like every woman shines their feminine a certain way. And what my experience, limited experience of watching Hillary is that her feminine actually shows up by her compassion to all races and creeds. She's very much an advocate. Like, she is advocate for the African American community. She's been doing that her whole entire life. She's been speaking up in certain areas, and it's that compassionate heart that stands up for what is right that I think you get to judge her on her feminine. But again, like Jennie said, it's like she's in a masculine role and she's got to be very strong or nobody would take her seriously. So it's a tricky edge.
She has to be the most single, scrutinized female leader in the world right now, if not ever. I know the UK had Margaret Thatcher, so she probably got a degree of that back in the 80s. But I wonder how that will play out, because she'll be the first, and I imagine the next female president might be a little more relaxed. I mean, once that bubble is burst, once she's taken that step, so Hillary's kind of taken the brunt of it, I think, and will have a harder time of it in terms of being judged than the next president.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, Hillary is certainly, she's having to penetrate something that hasn't been penetrated in this particular way before, which is the masculine. The masculine is penetration. Well, she's trying to penetrate the Oval Office as a president in a way that no one has ever done before as a woman. So she's doing it the best way, in my opinion, the best way she knows how, which is to really put on her masculine so she can do that. Once she's done that, I agree. I think she's loosened something around it a little bit that perhaps the next woman president can step in an entirely different way. And it's the same way as when women stepped into the business world in different roles. As women became CEOs and presidents of companies, and women didn't start out that way. They started getting their foot in the door as secretaries, and that was a big step. But once they did that, it loosened around that role a little bit, and they were able to do it in a different way. Then they were able to take on more management and supervisor type roles, but they had to do it in a very specific way. and then they loosened it. So in my mind, she's doing what women have done throughout centuries, is they really have to penetrate this role in a very specific way in order for other women to be able to do it in a different way.
Let's talk about Hillary and Bill a little bit more, because I just thought of a fascinating question with them that might be really useful in the shades of intimacy context. We have like these cultural expectations of what man and masculine looks like and what woman and feminine looks like. But I remember when he came into office, she was criticized strongly from the start as like being involved, being part of everything. Like, I mean, she was not the first lady who baked the cookies, right? Not at all. I mean, she was making policy. She was on the ground from the beginning. So here's my question. Literally, they kind of made a great partnership. In some areas, she was the masculine, which created the container for him to radiate and lead and shine and give these talks. Why not? What's wrong with that? And yet it was criticized, because if she has that strength, she held a structure that he could flow into at certain times. Why not?
Well, and I think that shows the evolution that we've done. And I think this election is really tricky because I think we have evolved to such a great extent, but just like when you're dealing with a rubber band, when a rubber band is just about to break, we had our first African American president. We had really stretched this envelope in a very, very different way than we'd ever done before. And when you get that extreme stretch position, there's always a recoil that happens. And so what has happened in this election is that there are people that are really frightened of the trend, which is the trend that is happening all over the world. It's not just in the US. I mean, there's a major shift where the feminine is coming back into power, and all of the feminine is trying to figure out what this is supposed to look like, because we know we can't go back to the 1950s. We know we're not in the 1970s. We know we're not in the year 2000. There's this evolution happening, but the evolution has to happen inside of each of us too. And I think that's why we teach the Elemental Feminine and the Shades of Intimacy workshop, because we're all trying to discover what that's supposed to look like without putting labels on it, like you said. I mean, the labels are becoming very, very fuzzy at this point. And so that's why we talk about masculine and feminine as energies, and that we all have both sides, and to be fluid within them rather than these stereotypes of being macho or, the girly girl or something, and to actually be fluid between all of them.